items in the pouch in front of you.
Have a safe and informative journey.
Hello, I'm Nathan Hartman, and this is Dreamfinders, a podcast about the creative culture of Disney theme parks. In 1955, William Sully Sullivan was miserable. At 19, he was just starting out in life, but found himself stuck in a stuffy hangar all day making airplanes. But then Walt Disney introduced his new theme park on TV, and the rest is history. Wanting a job that looked like fun, Sully was ripping tickets at the Jungle Cruise about a week and a half after the park opened, and stayed around for the next 39 and a half years, finally retiring as the vice president of the Magic Kingdom. Sully Sullivan was around for some of the greatest moments in Disney Parks history, and he talks about them all in his book From Jungle Cruise Skipper to Disney Legend. Throughout his time, he gave Walt private tours through the Jungle Cruise, kept Small World operating at the 1964 World's Fair, and helped open the Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and Disneyland Paris. We talk about all of that and more coming right up on Dreamfinders. You have a long and wonderful career with the Walt Disney Company, but before we get into all of that, I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about your origin tale, because it's really interesting. You were a teenager living in Anaheim when Disney was being constructed.
That's correct.
Was there a lot of local buzz?
Nobody knew anything about it and what was really going on because they'd never seen anything done like that. And it was just, a lot of talk and not a lot of going on. They didn't think it'd ever fly.
Did you feel like it might fly?
I had no idea because I didn't know anything about it until I watched it on TV at night, and I thought it was neat and good idea. And then I watched the opening on TV that Sunday, and went out and got an interview and got a job.
So that's it. You make a good point there, because your family were avid Disneyland TV show watchers at the time.
Oh yeah, Wonderful World of Color.
How similar was the Walt of Wonderful World of Color to the man you ended up getting to know?
Oh, that was Walt. I mean, he was not a phony person. When you saw him on TV, he was the same as he was on the outside.
So Disneyland opens, and I believe you were 19 when you quit your job making airplanes and start ripping tickets over at Jungle Cruise.
Yeah.
Was it just, you mentioned this in your book about sort of the grind of the airplane job. Was that mostly the reason you made the switch over to Disneyland? Was there more of appeal than just getting out? I
wasn't happy where I was, and my boss wasn't happy with me because I was a smart aleck kid, and I was working inside the environment was not conducive to having fun.
And was there you're a big outdoorsman? Was there an appeal of getting back outdoors and
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Love the sun.
So you quickly moved to Skipper, and while stories of the Jungle Cruise antics are well known, whole books have been written on them, you don't hear much about some of the quieter moments. I think we hear sort of of the jokes and the tales, but not necessarily about the stiller moments. And Walt would come and sit with you during breaks sometimes, right, and just chat because he sort of lived nearby.
Generally, he'd come down on Tuesday evening for the Wednesday morning Park Operations Committee meeting. And he'd come down, and he had his apartment above the firehouse, and he'd walk the back way from his apartment past the boat dock, or not the boat dock, but the marina, and he'd walk out there, and there'd going to be 750 people in the park all day, and we were open from 9 to 9. And so we'd sit down and we'd just talk, and it would be a foggy night, and he'd just come and see what everybody thought about the place. He was a neat guy.
And he was inquisitive, too.
Oh, absolutely.
He was not necessarily just there to tell you what to think about the park, but he did seem very concerned about not only the experience of the guests, but of the cast members as well. Is that about correct?
Absolutely. He wanted to know what we thought and what the guests thought about the place and how we could make it better and what we should do to make it better. And he wanted to get everybody's opinion. No, he was seeking knowledge all throughout the place.
Did you find? Did you have any suggestions that they ended up taking that Walt thought were good, or something your buddies came up with?
The dock the people used to trip getting into the boat dock because it was about 18 inches step up and over. And he says, what are we having so many accidents for? We said, if we raise the dock, a bunch of us, all of us that were there because we all loaded boats, we suggested they raise the dock and step off into it and step down into the boat instead of stepping up and over the gunnel. And he thought that was a good idea.
Did you ever have to give the boss a tour of the lagoon? I know he liked to take a round and see how things were going.
Oh, he would come and ride with us. It was interesting. Sometimes he'd ride with guests. Sometimes he'd just take a boat by himself. If he was thinking about how to make things better, we'd go out and we'd cruise and take the normal time on the boat. And sometimes we'd get out there and we'd stop, and then we'd pick up the speed because he was interested in what was going on.
I think a lot of people when they think about Disney cast member culture, it's sort of taken as a gimme now. But you saw sort of an evolution of a lot of what is now considered standard practice, including the four main principles that you line out in your book that Disney pushed: safety, courtesy, show, and capacity. You've mentioned in the past that you don't think the principle of show is as emphasized as it used to be. Why do you think that was so important to Walt at the time? Because
he was a showman, and he wanted the guests to enjoy themselves. He's just like he wanted people to watch his movies. He wanted them to enjoy themselves while they were in his park. That was the first time that he'd ever been face to face with our guests. He'd got on a movie screen, he's miles away, but he wanted to make damn sure that the guests were having fun and they got their money's worth. As Walt would say, he said, I don't care what they say when they're coming in. I'm worried about what they say when they're going out.
The Jungle Cruise, of course, is very important to you as your career starter. But not just your career was affected by the Jungle Cruise. Tell us a little bit about the girl who worked at the Hawaiian shop next door.
Her name is Jackie. And we went together for 2.5 years, and we've been married for over 60 years now. It's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Let's see here. In 1959, you became a permanent supervisor.
Right. Assistant supervisor.
And that includes all the headaches, of course, that come with it, like grad nights.
Those grad nights were not a headache. They were fun.
Now, it sounds like guests in these could get a little wild, though.
Oh, they got a little wild on Friday and Saturday nights when the Marines would come up or when the sailors would come up they'd get out of boot camp. It got pretty exciting once in a while out there.
Was it hard to maintain some sort of order in those moments?
No, because we had them outnumbered. And we were strict, and we had strict rules, and we enforced the rules. And if they screwed up, we'd throw them out of the park. And sometimes we'd 86 them.
Do you feel you had to 86 a lot?
Not really. No, not really. No, they were all when they came to the park, they knew they had to act like ladies and gentlemen. Except for grad nights, they'd bring their booze in. They'd hide it in funny places, and but they'd come in earlier in the day, and they put it in the lockers under the train station, and we'd go through and empty all the lockers before the gates opened. One gal wore a hot water bottle under her dress and had a little tube there, and everybody would dance with her, and they'd get a little sip when they danced with her because she'd squeeze them. All kinds of good stuff.
So by 1964, though, you found yourself assistant manager of Disney attractions at the World's Fair. Did you think it's hard for people to comprehend now how massive an event that World's Fair was?
It took days to see it all if you want to see it. But it was a real undertaking.
What was your job at the World's Fair? What were you in charge of?
We had 4 Disney shows out there. And I went out the first year I was supposed to only be out there 3 weeks, but I ended up being 6. And I was just one of the supervisors on the show. But the second year, in 1965, I went out and I was assistant manager of all 4 of the Disney, primarily the Small World, but we oversaw the caretaking of the other 3 Disney shows, just to make sure they maintained the Disney quality.
Did you have a favorite pavilion from the fair, Disney operated or otherwise?
Small World. That was a great show. I mean, we were in the top 5 every week.
And Small World's one that has stayed with you throughout your career. You've opened, I believe, the majority, if not all, of the Small World's.
I've opened 6 of them.
So before and around the World's Fair, this is when Walt is sort of seriously talking about what is at the time known as the Florida Project.
It was Project X then.
Project X. When did you first get wind that this was an idea that was floating around?
Not till we got back home in 65, late 65. But what happened? Walt used the fair to test the audience if the Disney shows would be accepted, because only 6% of our business came from east of the Mississippi, and Walt would, he had Bob Foster down here buying land. But he was just checking things and seeing what things were going on to see how we were accepted. But we were getting committed. We started buying land in '63, and they picked the spot and they said that's where we're going to be. Buy some land. We started out we were going to only buy about 4,000 acres, and the price of the land was so cheap and so good. Walt just kept buying land, and ended up with 28,000 acres.
There was a lot of a bit of cloak and dagger going on to get some of this land as well. Of course, the secret wasn't supposed to get out just yet.
There were 13 companies formed by Disney to buy the land, and none of them had connection with Disney. And it was kept secret for I don't know when Walt announced. I think it was late '65, but it was kept secret for 2 or 3 years, and finally it leaked out somehow.
Was it a feeling at the time? Of course, many were interested in the Magic Kingdom aspect, but Disney, on the other hand, was more, his mind was fascinated by the concept of what Epcot, the actual community, would be like. In the company around it, did people have that understanding that the Magic Kingdom was sort of a way to make this bigger dream come true, or were everyone sort of focused at that time?
We all had to work on selling that idea. Originally it was going to be called Epcot, which stood for Epcot, Experimental Prototype City of Tomorrow, and that didn't work. So that's when they changed it to Community.
Was the Florida Project, Project X, was this something that you wanted to be a part of immediately, or were you happy with where you were at in California?
I was the third person to volunteer to come down. And the boss says, no, I got a lot more to teach you. So I went back home.
How different was the Florida of that time compared to what it is now when you came down? It was at the time Orange Groves. It's fairly remote. Was there
No, it was not fairly remote. It was remote as hell. We were out in the middle of the swamps.
And how hard was that? How hard was that process to? I always feel like the saying goes, like, you can't really stop Florida from being Florida. You can just keep it at bay. Was that a major concern, how you were going to, especially because of the utilidors and all of that, how you were going to get all of that done?
Oh, we knew how to build a Magic Kingdom. We didn't know how to run hotels. We didn't know how to run all the parking. We didn't know how to do all that other stuff, but we learned by trying, making mistakes. And we corrected our mistakes and kept going. Well, it's like Card used to say, quit talking about it, let's start doing it. And that's what we did.
When you opened the Magic Kingdom, you were in charge of Main Street, Frontierland, and Adventureland, correct?
Main Street, Adventureland, Frontierland, Liberty Square, security and fire prevention.
That's a heck of a lot. What was a normal? What was a normal day for you in such a position? There's a lot going on.
I'd be in there about 8 o'clock, and I'd leave about 6. And I'd go up to the front gate and make sure that everybody was ready to get the thing open at 8 o'clock or 8:30, because we always led the gate by 9 o'clock, because our operating hours were 9 o'clock, and we always opened the gates at 8:30, and we'd go from there. And we just make sure that everything was staffed, that everything was clean, that it was kept clean, and that our merchandisers were ready and our feed people were ready. So yeah, we just made sure that everybody's working at it.
What was one of the larger stressors about dealing in operations?
Making sure that the folks had a good time. The safety, show, courtesy, and capacity.
You You mention in your book that Dick Nunes, who, for those who don't know, was president of the Outdoor Recreation Division, which included most of Disney World. And he retired, of course, as chairman of Disney Attractions. And you say that he was probably the person that most reminded you of Walt. Why is that?
Because he always wanted to get it, what Walt wanted done, and the way that Walt wanted it done, he wanted to make sure it got done that way. And we didn't, so we didn't scrimp on a buck. We did it right the first time, hopefully. We wanted quality, and that's what, made Disney different. People would ask me, every once in a while, what makes Disney different? I says, it's quality. It's quality of our people, it's quality of our shows, it's quality of our merchandise, it's quality of our costumes, it's quality of our landscaping, it's quality of everything. Dick made sure that quality was there. He was a taskmaster. He was tough to work for, but he was fair. As he would say, be fair, firm, and consistent. And he was.
One of the things that I always find interesting about the Disney fan community is they have this interest in, I think, what is in some ways a false rivalry between operations and Imagineering. What was that relationship like between those two groups?
It wasn't, I don't know if we could call it a rivalry or what, but I think it was more control than anything. But they were the dreamers and we were the doers. They would, they wouldn't always listen to us the way we thought it should be designed. They'd want to make it pretty and, make it, and we'd want to make it functional. And, we banged heads a lot. I did that for 4 years on Epcot, and it worked.
Do you feel that tension that comes from that created something greater than if either side got everything they wanted?
Friction makes motion. That's what we had. We had friction and made motion. We got it done.
You've, in the book, you've praised Michael Eisner, but also said that he and Frank Wells didn't really understand sort of the card walker way, but you didn't necessarily have an issue with that. Looking back, do you think that Eisner was probably doing it the smart way to keep the theme parks relevant, or has his philosophy softened sort of what makes Epcot great? Where do you sort of land on that? Because you definitely seem to appreciate what they brought.
Yes. Well, you had to. Let me divest a little bit. Eisner was a strange individual, a smart guy, and creative as hell. He was like, they were kind of like Roy and Walt and Roy with Michael and Frank. And Michael did his best to learn the business our way. He would come out there incognito and spend the afternoon or spend the day. He would pay his way he would park his car in the lot, come in, pay his way into the park, and visit the park as a guest. And we'd always catch him. But no, he was interesting. He tried to do it as best he could, because he appreciated the Disney philosophy and the Disney way of doing things.
So would you say it was more culture that made a shift away from possibly allowing the Disney method to happen without any evolution, or?
It wasn't Michael and Frank. Michael and Frank, it wasn't them that the culture changed. Well, I should say that Michael and Frank were more Hollywood than Walt, and the way Hollywood did it, and that was the only change that they brought to us. Michael and Frank both were flamboyant, but they had the Disney thought, Disney mind. They wanted to do it the right way, France is you look at the French theme park. That's a gorgeous park, and that's what Michael and Frank were instrumental in getting done. And it's a hell of a park.
Do you have beyond, of course, the American parks? Do you have a favorite international Disney theme park?
Yeah, I think it would be. Well, I'll tell you, the Japanese have done a fantastic job over there. I helped train one of the directors of operations at the outset, and Kamisawa-san, and a great guy. And he was there 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and he made sure it was done the way we trained him to do it. And he stuck by it all the way. And it was interesting. I went over there. I spent 2 weeks over there and doing an analysis of the operation. And I rode the Jungle Cruise, and it was funny. We rode it a couple times, but we rode it. I couldn't understand a word the skipper said, but I know exactly what he was saying. It was funny. It was a great trip. And they did a great job, and the park is clean. But I think the French show is probably the prettiest, because we spent more money on that show than anything. Now, because Michael and Frank wanted to make a statement, and they did. It's a gorgeous park.
Why do you think it took? I think we would all agree now that Disneyland Paris has cemented itself into French culture, but it did take a while for Euro Disney to really sort of make a splash. Why do you think French culture took so long to sort of gravitate towards it?
Because it wasn't French, and it wasn't done by the French. And the French are strange people to work with. Good people. I met some great people over there. And unfortunately, when we built that park, it was at the doldrums of our economy, and the money that we borrowed, we paid 18% on and stuff like that. And the contract with the French covered like 17 volumes. And it just became very burdensome.
So complicated from the start.
It was very definitely.
If you could make sure, and I think you sort of mentioned that there's an evolution to all things at the Disney parks, and it's got to entertain the guests, and that's very important. But if you could make sure a ride lasted beyond your time, what ride would you want to make sure got to go to the next generation?
The Jungle Cruise, of course. I mean, it's great, and it's iconic. It's been there, and it has good capacity. Small World, same thing. It's fun. It's exciting, and all those little kids, those little dolls up there. Rolly Crump and Mary Blair did a hell of a job on that, and it's a fun attraction. So it'd be a toss up for me between the Jungle Cruise and Small World.
Now, let me ask you, all these years later, can you still remember any of your Jungle Cruise spiel?
I tried. We were out there for the 60th at Disneyland, and they wanted me to give a spiel on the boat, and I tried, and I messed up a couple of the old jokes.
Wrapping up here, it seems in all stages of your career, when you reflect, you emphasize the people that made it happen. What do you think the world could learn that the theme park or working environment fostered in you and your work ethic?
Eliminate the bureaucracy. Think about it. Think of quality. Make sure that you do it right. Keep it clean, and keep it entertaining.
Oh, well, I think we can all agree with that. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Okay, all right.
And that's it for this episode of Dreamfinders. I can't thank Sully Sullivan enough for being my guest. You should definitely check out his book, From Jungle Cruise Skipper to Disney Legend, published by Theme Park Press. Find it on Amazon or at themeparkpress.com. Our podcast artwork is provided by J.P. Tanner. Find his other work at tanwoodcreative.com. This podcast is distributed by WDW News Today, the worldwide leader in Disney Parks news. Read all they have to offer at wdwnt.com. Dreamfinders is hosted and produced by yours truly, Nathan Hartman, who you can follow on Twitter at SomeStuffISaid. Tell your friends about the show, and please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcast. It really means a lot. Also, if you or someone else you know would make a great guest on this program, feel free to email me at dreamfinders@wdwnt.com. I'm Nathan Hartman, and remember, if we can dream it, then we can do it.